doing this, John.
The Autoline Supplier Symposium is brought to you by our signature sponsor, Ford Motor Company, and also by BDO, Hella, and Borg Warner. Here now is your host, John McElroy.
Just incredible. Oh, here we go. Hello and welcome to the 2017 Autoline Supplier Symposium, the 5th annual, I should hasten to add. I can't believe we've been doing this for 5 years, but we love to bring you discussions of what's going on in the supplier side of the business from the floor of the 2017 Detroit Auto Show, and even more specifically, from the Ford display. And you got to look around and take a look at this display. It is gigantic. It is beautiful. It is so high tech. And of course, the cars are the stars at this thing. But joining me right now is Burt Jordan, the Vice President of Global Vehicle and Powertrain Purchasing and Supplier Diversity at Ford. And Burt, great to have you on board today.
Pleased to be here, John. Thank you very much for having me.
I know that strong supplier relationships are what every car company talks about. It's got to be true at Ford, but tell me what you're doing these days to really strengthen those bonds.
Well, to start with, supplier relations are at the essence of what we have to do. 70% of our cost of goods sold comes from the supply base. So we're only as good as our suppliers are going to be. So establishing those key relationships are really important. And so we really focus on it.
What's your philosophy behind it, though? I mean, I know you focus on it, but specifically what's helped driving the thinking?
Well, we've been really trying to build those relationships. We started something a little over a decade ago called our Line Business Framework, or ABF. And that was about how do we strengthen our relationship with our suppliers, how do we focus on those key suppliers that help build our business. And so we established that, and we have a family of suppliers. There's about 100 of them in total. And then we've also this year established our supplier relationship framework, which is really should we work with all of our suppliers? How should we behave? And so we put some tools in place around that. We have something that we work with our key suppliers called a business unit review, where all of our global suppliers, we go out with them, we meet with them, we review their business, we review their strategy, they review our strategy, we review the behaviors and the principles of ABF and supplier relationship framework, and try to make sure that we're working in that manner, because in the end, we want to be customer of choice. Because I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
If we hadn't had ABF when the tsunami occurred in Japan, we had one particular supplier and one part that went on every Ford Motor Company vehicle around the world. And they were our ABF suppliers. And if we hadn't had the relationship we had, we could have shut the company down. But we never missed a job because of the relationship we had established. And so they're the essence. We want to be customer of choice. You want to get their best people, their best talent, and their best technologies. And if you don't have those relationships, you won't get there.
So in this case, with the tsunami, what you're saying is that they pulled out all the stops to make sure that they didn't shut you down, and maybe if you weren't on such a good terms with them, that might not have happened.
Absolutely, because with the consolidation that's occurred, with all the things that have happened, suppliers have choices. They have choices.
There's other automakers out there to sell to.
Exactly, and we want to be the one they want to sell to. And so that's what makes our cars great, our products great. And so we're going to continue to work to build that, because there's always room for improvement. Mm-hmm. We've gotten better, but we still got work to do.
You've got these 100 or so suppliers that you call it ABF, is it?
ABF.
And what about smaller suppliers, though? What about those who are not on the list?
Well, our supplier relationship framework applies to every supplier that we do business with. But we also have our supplier diversity team as well. And they really are focused on building and sustaining suppliers that are in our communities, because we want to do business with people in our communities and continue to buy in our communities and build them up. And some of the things we do with them, like we have a program called Joint Technology Framework that we utilize with our diverse suppliers, which gives them access to technology that they may not otherwise have access to, and we even allow them to sell it to other manufacturers.
Like what kind of technology?
Well, we just implemented something on a lift gate with one of our key suppliers, Croissant and Flexing Gate, not too long ago. And as you know, Flexing Gate's one of our top suppliers. It just happens to be a diverse supplier as well. Mm-hmm. And we've been working with them on technology, as well as, like I said, this Croissant, where we implemented this new technology on the lift gate. So we've given them access to things that otherwise they wouldn't, to help build their businesses. And hopefully they'll be able to utilize those technologies with their other customers.
Very interesting. So for the ABF suppliers, this 100 core group, what's it take to get on that list?
Well, we look at the importance in terms of the commodity. We look at where they fit into the supply base. We look at their geography, because we look at them from a global perspective. Because most of our business is global now. As you know, we consolidated our platforms, and so we look at people that can support us on a global basis. We look at their technologies, we look at their footprint, and just their overall capability, including their leadership and where they fit in the supply base.
And for the smaller suppliers, do you put them in touch with these ABF companies, or how does that work?
We do. For example, I'll give you a great example of that. When we were in the process of selling some of our ACH businesses, we put some of our diverse suppliers together and our larger ABF suppliers. So for an example, we sold one of our facilities to Andre Rush's companies, the Rush Group, and Faurecia, and they created something called Detroit Manufacturing Systems. So they're not only supporting us, but they also established a facility in the city of Detroit. So they're supporting the city of Detroit, and they brought in, I think, about 800 jobs. So that was one example. We also sold one of our ACH climate facilities, HVAC facilities, and we sold that to Piston Group and to Valeo, and they created DTS. So we're trying to do what's right for the businesses, what's right for our suppliers, what's right for the communities, and trying to build those businesses.
I've heard a lot of what Ford's doing, especially in Michigan and even in the United States. Do you take this diversity thinking to other countries as well?
We do. We look at diversity because it's about building sustainable businesses. So we've actually combined our sustainability group and our supplier diversity group, and it's all about creating a better world. So each country looks at diversity a little differently, but we try and make it a better place for everybody, and as we focus on it. We do it in South Africa, we've done it in Europe, we even give diversity awards out in Europe. So it's really important. And we established our program in 1978, and we have purchased almost $100 billion from diverse suppliers, that being minorities, women, veteran-owned companies.
It's a pretty impressive number. Okay, Ford has helped out all these supplier companies, whether the big ABF ones or the smaller, more diverse ones. Have suppliers taught you guys anything about how to go about doing business?
Well, yeah, one of the things we've done is we've established a supplier council over the last 15 months or so. And one of the things that we ask, and we do a lot of benchmarking, trying to understand where we have opportunities in terms of improving our business, doing some benchmarking to understand what our competitors are doing. So we talk to them. Matter of fact, we had one of our supplier council meetings this past Monday, and we have 4 a year. And they're with a diverse group of suppliers. There were some of the minority businesses. We have women on it, European suppliers, North American suppliers. So it's a pretty impressive group.
Yeah, no kidding. You also handle all powertrain purchasing.
Yes.
This has got to be crazy these days, right? With so many new powertrain technologies coming to the fore.
Well, it's been exciting. There was a point in time when we used to change powertrains maybe every 10 years or so, every 8 years. Now the technology is moving so fast, we're churning powertrains every 3 years. And then when you think about what's happening with electrification and hybrids, we're moving very, very fast-paced and trying to bring as much technology in, because we all still focused on meeting the one national standard.
That's exactly right. There's so much change in this technology, especially when you look at batteries. It keeps advancing so much. From a purchasing standpoint, how do you make sure that you're betting on the right technology, that it's going to stand up for a few years?
Well, one of the things we do, and it's one of the best practices we think, is we hold what we call EBTRs, Executive Business and Technology Reviews, with a number of our key suppliers throughout the year. And it is essentially only focused on technology reviews with key suppliers, and we do it with specifically powertrain suppliers, trying to understand what is out there and what the opportunities are and how could we go about implementing it. And so we try and get a head start, because these are typically looking at things that are probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years out, and how do we bring those in for implementation.
So how do you think your track record's been so far?
Well, it's getting better, but there's always more opportunity, right?
There always is. Burt, anything else that we should be talking about here that you'd like to share with the audience?
No, well, that we're continuing to work on and build better relationships with our suppliers, because that's, like I said, at the heart and the essence of what we do as a business.
There's always going to be a tension, though, isn't there, between automaker and supplier?
Absolutely. It's just like a marriage, right?
Amen, brother.
It's just like your marriage.
You work at it every day.
You work at it every day, and you continue to build and get better and better, and you work your way through those roadblocks and those potholes.
That's right.
Okay.
Burt Jordan, thanks so much for your time today. Very interesting insights into what Ford Motor Company is doing with its purchasing operations.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Good deal. Don't go away, folks. We got more from the Autoline Supplier Symposium coming up. In fact, our next group here is from the OESA. They got some interesting things to share with what's going on in the supplier community. Back in a moment.
All right.
Good job, man.
Yeah, thanks,
that was
buddy.
good. Yeah,
All right.
always enjoy talking with you.
All right.
Whoop, let them get the mic off.
Nice. All right, thank you, sir.
Over here, kids. You. Here. In you go. Thank you. Show traffic.
Life is a sport. We are the utility. The unstoppable.
11 time zones. Huh? Once this deal is done, we'll be in 11 time zones.
What's that? Trivia?
Just saying what this, means for us.
It means quarterly filings across 3 continents. Transfer pricing issues, international...
Okay, I get it. Who do we have handling this?
BDO.
And over there?
BDO.
People who know BDO.
A successful family-owned company listed on the stock exchange and with a rich history spanning over 100 years. Hella is a global leader in developing and manufacturing lighting and electronic products for the automotive industry. With over 30,000 employees, Hella offers unique and innovative lighting solutions for all types of vehicles throughout the world. At Hella, we embrace the challenges of current technological limits and develop extraordinary ideas for the future. Innovative strength, technical competence, and dedicated employees. Visit Hella.com today for more information and career opportunities.
Welcome back to the 5th Annual Autoline Supplier Symposium, coming to you from the floor of the 2017 Detroit Auto Show at the Ford display. This place is jam-packed right now because it's industry days, and all kinds of people from both the OEMs and the suppliers are here to catch what's on the floor of the show. But joining me right now are three of my friends who are going to talk about what's going on in the supplier end of the business. This panel, by the way, was organized by the Original Equipment Supplier Association, and that's pretty good because we've got their Executive Director for Strategy Research and their Senior Economist, Charles Chesbrough. Charlie, great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Also joining us today is Ken Hopkins. He's the President and CEO of NEAPCO Holdings, LLC. And we've also got Len Offenbacher, the CEO and President of INTEVA Products. Great to have all three of you here. But I got to ask you, Ken, because a lot of people probably have not heard of NEAPCO. What is it?
So it's NEAPCO.
NEAPCO, excuse me. Gosh dang it.
NEAPCO has been around since 1921. It originated in Connecticut, New England Auto Products Company, and had been around for 90 years doing a lot of aftermarket and off-highway things. And then about 2008, we purchased the driveline assets from Visteon. And so then we got into the auto industry.
Very interesting. New England Auto Products.
Yeah.
Who'd have ever figured?
Yeah.
And Lon, just in case people are not up to speed with what INTEVA is, bring us up to speed.
Well, INTEVA, we started as a spinoff out of Delphi. We're the interiors business. We do roofs, sunroofs. We do closure systems and motors and electronics. We got 50 locations around the world. We're in 18 countries, 5 continents. Pretty busy.
Big operation.
Pretty busy.
You took some pieces and you really built it into something.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Good deal. Well, let's get into the discussion here. Charlie, I want to start off with you because you track the thinking that's going on in the automotive supplier community. And some of your research has been showing some increasing pessimism. Explain why. And I asked why because, hey, we just finished in North America another all-time record.
That's right, John. We had a record year coming off of a record year last year, so you would think suppliers would be really happy and optimistic. But I think one of the main issues they're looking at is the difficulty that they see on the horizon with the economy, that maybe not for this year, but when we look over the longer term, that there's just a lot of headwinds that they know are coming. One being slower growth rates on vehicle sales. We're well past the recovery phase of the last recession, and so there's not a lot of growing opportunity in the marketplace. Sales are pretty much going to be flatlining a bit from here. And we're looking at higher interest rates when we look down the road, and that's always concerning to certainly suppliers and consumers, and so that's going to put some threat on the vehicle volumes that we've seen. But that's not to take anything away from the great year we just had in 2016, and I think that we're probably looking at something similar to that here in 2017 as well.
Ken, what's your thoughts? You pessimistic or optimistic looking forward?
Yeah, I'm clearly in the optimistic side, and I understand everything that Charles said. There's a lot of reasons to be pessimistic. You can take a look at the high inventory rates of the Detroit 3, I think highest in 8 years right now. You can take a look at the extra incentives that are being thrown on cars to sell them, but you know what? I'll take $18.5 million or $17.5 million. I think more importantly, John, is it's important to take a look at the opportunities ahead of us. Sure, we can't always count on an extra million vehicles next year to continue to drive our sales. Now is when it starts to really get good, in my mind, as management and as leadership. You get an opportunity to say, where are the winners going to be? Where are the losers are going to be? You can do that from technology, you can do it from platforms, and now is really where we kind of separate the winners from the losers. And as long as you plan on being a winner, life's good.
Okay, now I got to ask Len, is the glass half full or half empty?
Yeah, I think it's, I would call myself cautiously optimistic. There's really nothing on the horizon that looks like cataclysmic. Obviously, we got a kind of a funny political environment. We got a lot of funny kind of stuff going on, but it's still pretty strong. And the products are just outstanding, and the amount of new launches that are coming on, and to Ken's point, you have to look at where you're at and the places you're playing in. And we supply virtually everybody in the industry that makes cars or trucks. And so you kind of look at it and you say, we're on the right vehicles, we're with the right partners. Just keep working it.
Len, let me ask you this. Last year, several supplier executives told me they wouldn't mind if car sales slowed down just a little bit because they were running so much overtime and had so many expedited shipments that if things slowed down a little bit, they told me they'd actually be more profitable. Do you see it that way or no?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think a lot of it depends on what you're doing and how you do it. We've pretty much managed the demand cycle with our capability, so we really haven't had to run a lot of overtime. We are full, but running 2 shifts, you might have a 3rd shift to give, you might have a Saturday to give, and that's about the float point in the market right now. We got a couple customers that are over the top, but they're managing their own assembly process. So that's where I actually feel pretty comfortable about it.
Charlie, is it possible too that as you survey the members at OESA and you've picked up on this growing pessimism, that maybe it's going to change? Could it be that since the election, maybe there's more certainty? And I ask that in the sense that if you look at the business confidence index, it has shot way up. You look at the stock market, it's off to the races.
Consumer confidence is
Consumer confidence is up. Could it be that your next survey will show a change of opinion in the supplier community?
I think it's possible. I will say, though, that in terms of trade policy, there's a lot of uncertainty that's just been unleashed, and that's going to have a significant impact for many of our members, and that's going to make their business planning that much more of a challenge. The one thing I also think that's contributing to some of the pessimism out there for suppliers that we found in our own research is that the ability to find workers is becoming a real challenge, and that labor supply has been an issue talked about in this town for quite some time. There's just not enough engineers to go around and skilled workers. Well, that problem is going to continue, and in our last survey we had asked folks what are their major concerns for 2017, and finding labor was relatively low compared to other things, but for about 20% of our respondents it was named as one of the top 2 concerns that they have in 2017, of being able to find skilled workers in order to meet the demand requirements that they have. So it's not an issue for everybody, but for some suppliers it's a very pressing problem for them.
Ken, is it a problem at NEAPCO?
I could see it being a problem going forward. Last year was a great year for us. We hired 130 people in the Detroit area, 50 salary workers, 80 direct labor workers. So we really it wasn't impossible, it was a bit challenging. We see it getting a little bit more difficult. And I agree with Charles, that's one of the 2 things that is probably on top of our mind, and the other one, of course, being the trade. Uncertainty about what's going to happen in this Trump era.
Do you have plants in Mexico?
I have plants in Mexico. In fact, built a plant last year.
Oh, yeah.
But 75% of that product goes outside of North America. So we didn't build it just to import parts into America. And in fact, we've been working ever since Trump was elected on our secondary plan. What happens if X, A, B, or C happens?
Gotcha. And Len, how about you? You have a problem getting people?
Whenever this question comes up, I like to tell just my 30-second pitch on when we launched the company. I told our HR VP that Tom Munley, I said, look, first and foremost, we're going to have a strong co-op and internship program. We did that from day one, and we have grown that now into a very strong college recruit program too. So we have a really strong field coming up through the from the bottom up, and great training, and the organization embraces it. It's all about culture, right? So our people are grabbing a hold of these kids, we're helping them grow up, and we've got a new program that is actually helping solidify it with our college recruits, where we actually send them out to the manufacturing floor for the first 12 to 18 months of their career, and they get to see the mistakes and the successes of the work that they would be doing back in if they were just straight into an engineering design kind of a program. So it's been a lot of fun. We really haven't had there's spot problems, process control engineers, in a remote location, but in general we've been very successful with our recruiting program and bringing people in through the process.
Lon, you've got plants all over the world. Do you find this issue that Charlie's raised here of trouble getting people in other countries as well?
There's spots that are tougher. Eastern Europe, it's a little bit tougher because the talent pool's been saturated. Germany, sometimes it's tougher to find because it's pretty much at full employment for engineers. But I'd say in general, China, no. In fact, we introduced co-op education in our China locations, and we now have a class of about 20 every year that are going through a co-op education program. So we're using the tools effectively around the world.
Ken, let's change a little bit to what's going on in the marketplace. There is so much change going on. It almost seems that as if someone threw the switch and people are abandoning passenger cars and going into crossovers, or small vans and big vans have really caught fire, certainly the big ones. How do you deal with these changes, these shifts in the marketplace? Because when you get an order from a car company, it's a couple of years before you actually have to put it in production if you're on an advanced program. How do you deal with these changes?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, John. I think that's what I was alluding to even earlier, is that we may have some dynamics that are changing, whether it's trade related or whether it's consumer demand. And I think that's what a management team needs to do. You need to take a look at your resources. You need to build flexibility into it in the beginning, and then learn how to react. If you take a look at a change as a negative, then it's going to be a negative. If you look at it as an opportunity, then you just need to go and execute. I don't think that there's an easy answer, because we all have capital tied up. We all have people tied up that are trained along these lines. But we rely on people like Charles to give us a little bit of insight into what's going to actually happen. I think we've seen some OEMs get hurt this past year. Toyota talked about it, Kia talked about it with not having enough of the crossovers and enough of the pickup trucks. But I don't think there's a great answer. You can't, even with guys like Charles, you can't look into the crystal ball and be perfectly clear. You just need to be ready to react.
Mm-hmm. Same question to you, Lon. How do you deal with the shifts in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think Ken actually said it fairly well. You've got to manage your exposure, yes. But you can't really pick the winners and losers, right? I mean, I can look at the Bolt and say, wow, if Elon is going to sell 400,000 of his Model 3, then Chevy ought to sell 600,000 of these guys, right? So there's some exciting new products, but how will they catch on? Because it's a passenger car, right? And right now you want the utility of a larger vehicle. But unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, I got a lot of gray hair. I've seen these cycles. Back in, I think it was 1981, I was a young engineer, and the market changed overnight when Saudi Arabia said, not shipping you any oil, right? And all of a sudden, GM went from 100 days of inventory of Chevettes to 3 days. And the Impala went from 3 days to 180 days, because they just changed. So I think the current market conditions are dynamic. We happen to have a lot of product on SUVs and full-size trucks, so I feel really good. But we also have products on, smaller cars too. So it's going to be a dynamic market, but I think you can flex and work your people on alternate projects if it really came to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't give up on the car just yet. I think when we see the buying conditions change and the economy slows a bit down the road from here, and interest rates are higher, and gasoline prices maybe rise a bit, consumers are going to be looking for affordability yet again. And in general, these crossovers and SUVs, and certainly the pickups, are all more expensive vehicles than your basic four-door sedan. And consumers may be coming back home, if you will, to these types of vehicles.
Charlie, anything else on your radar screen there that you're warning suppliers about? You ought to keep your heads up and eyes open about something coming?
Well, it's just that, when I do all the charts and I look at where the economy may be going, it's hard to see anything on the horizon right now that would knock us off this trajectory. Certainly many of the things that the Trump administration has proposed in terms of increased spending and tax cuts are all going to be great for business and consumers. But we're 9 years since the last recession began, and sort of when you chart this stuff out, we're about due. The recessions usually come up about every 6 to 8 years, or maybe a little bit longer.
The last recession was unlike any other in our lifetime.
So maybe we're on a different trajectory. That's certainly possible. But it does seem like when you look at where the unemployment rates are today, and 4.7%, I think the most recent one, as well as initial unemployment claims, I think they're at 43-year lows. We don't stay at these levels for very long until something happens in the economy to force a change in the labor market. It just seems timing-wise we're getting about due. But like I said, it's hard to see anything that's going to cause it right about now.
Ken, what's your sense?
Yeah, I think Charles is right. There's an inevitability around the auto industry. It's cyclical. We've heard that since we were little kids. And so that's the industry we decided to be in. What's really interesting to me is, yeah, we may be long in the tooth, but there's a change happening right now. We talked about this a few months ago, John. We don't know what's going to happen when ride sharing comes in or autonomous vehicles, but it's going to be a change. So whether the change happens to us or whether we cause the change, we just have to be ready for it. I can't tell you what it's going to be.
And Lon, you get the final thought on this. What's your outlook?
Well, again, I'm kind of a born optimist. I think that the market finds itself, and when there's changes, we know how to react. I mean, we were just in New York with the bankers a few months ago, and Wall Street's already figured out that there's going to be a massive recession or something, right? And I'm looking at it and saying, really? I mean, it's happened once in like 70 years. So I don't think, but can there be a correction? And oh, by the way, most of us that were around in 2008 and 9, we know what the tools are. We know how to react. So it's not like, a bunch of lemmings that are going to jump off the cliff into the ocean. So I think the industry is much better equipped to handle change and to handle the dynamics of a changing market.
I think that's a great point and a good point to wrap up on too. This is a tough industry.
It is.
It's been through a lot. It's been through the worst of times, and things look pretty good right now. Let's hope that continues.
Right.
I want to thank all three of you for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
And don't you all go away. We'll be right back. We've got one more panel to go today from the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. Back in a moment. Good job, guys.
All right. That was fun.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, good.
Thanks.
Good.
Just we have to be careful about walking away.
Over here, kids. You, here. In you go. Thank you. Show traffic.
Life is a sport. We are the utility. The unstoppable.
11 time zones. Huh? Once this deal is done, we'll be in 11 time zones.
What's that? Trivia?
Just saying what this, means for us.
It means quarterly filings across 3 continents. Transfer pricing issues, international...
Okay, I get it. Who do we have handling this?
BDO.
And over there?
BDO.
People who know BDO.
A successful family-owned company listed on the stock exchange and with a rich history spanning over 100 years. Hella is a global leader in developing and manufacturing lighting and electronic products for the automotive industry. With over 30,000 employees, Hella offers unique and innovative lighting solutions for all types of vehicles throughout the world. At Hella, we embrace the challenges of current technological limits and develop extraordinary ideas for the future. Innovative strength, technical competence, and dedicated employees. Visit Hella.com today for more information and career opportunities.
back. The 5th Annual Autoline Supplier Symposium, coming to you from the 2017 Detroit Auto Show, specifically from the Ford display, an amazingly gigantic and high-tech display with all the cars that they have in the market. And of course, people here for the industry days of this show, checking it all out. But now we start our panel with the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, and we kind of pick up on a theme that you heard a bit about in the prior panel, and that's all about this workforce development that we're hearing so much about, and especially critical on the manufacturing side of things. So joining me today to talk about that are Elizabeth Griffith, Director of Engineering and the General Manager of Global at Faurecia Interiors. Some say Faurecia, some say Faurecia. Well, how do you say it, Elizabeth?
Any way you want, it's okay. I technically do Faurecia.
Faurecia, okay. Also joining us today is Burrow, the President of Magna Interiors, and Jeannine Kunz, the Vice President of Tooling U at the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. So Jeannine, I'm going to start out with you. What is Tooling U?
Okay, great. Well, we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing manufacturing, and we do that two ways. It's all about promoting advanced technologies, like you said, here at the show, and developing the workforce to capitalize on that. So SME is all about ensuring the health and competitiveness of the manufacturing industry. And our Tooling U that you asked about is all the training and education of the workforce. So that's the component or the division of SME that focuses squarely on the workforce and the education side.
And is this done at the SME proper, or are you working with other schools?
We work, actually we work all over the country, technically internationally, but mostly here in North America. And it's focused on working with all size manufacturers, from the smallest, job shops all the way to the largest manufacturers in the world. And we work with hundreds and hundreds of schools across the United States.
Very interesting. We'll get back into more details on that. But Elizabeth, I want to ask you, is this an issue at Faurecia, trying to get the right kind of people into manufacturing?
I think you've heard a lot today and throughout the last few months about connectivity. And connectivity needs to happen on the manufacturing floor. And in order to do that, you need the right skill set. There is a tremendous skill gap through the automotive industry. It started in the 1980s and 90s with the advent of all the automation, and it has continued to get more acute as the low-cost labor tends to move offshore to China, India, Mexico. However, the skill gap is still there because all that automation that is still there that needs skilled people, not necessarily college degrees, but skilled people to run and actually program as well as take care of the equipment. And I like to highlight it that it's not going to be just a blue-collar, white-collar industry anymore. It's going to be more of a plaid industry, because I come from a very blue-collar background, and I now look at the fact that there's a lot of people that do not need that college education. It's been romanticized in America, and it needs to stop, because there's a lot of well-paying jobs that need the right people, and manufacturing industries need to make sure that we are looking at the future to make sure we have that skill set addressed.
Grahame, you see it that way, that we need to really train a lot of people, more people with vocational schools, not necessarily college education?
Absolutely agree. In fact, when you look at what we're doing at Magna, really on a global basis, the skills gap is absolutely there. As we bring in new technology and grow the business, it makes a very competitive landscape in terms of going for talent. So in terms of engaging with schools at every level, I think whether it's universities, colleges, vocational schools, we're investing a lot in that. Apprenticeships, we have approximately 150 apprentices in the company around the world at any given time. In terms of internships and co-ops, we probably go through 175 to 180 per year. And we're engaged with a lot of different schools, and so it's a big part of what we do. Absolutely. We're not going to be one of the best Tier 1 companies in the world without the best people.
Magna, of course, started as a tooling company. I mean, it's got to be part of your DNA. How are you going about making sure that you've got the right people on your floor, and especially on the tooling side of the business?
Absolutely. It's a very important part of our business yet today. You're right, it started with a couple of very creative, hardworking guys 60 years ago, and tooling's a big part of what we do, so, and a big part of the automotive industry. Again, the apprenticeships, we have a lot of our apprentices are studying tooling, so the partnering up with the right schools is critical. Bringing the right people into the company that have the aptitude to gain those skills. We're always looking to grow people from within the company, so it starts there, but invariably we do have to bring in people from the outside as well.
Yeah. Jeannine, all these programs are great, and the pay can be pretty good, but you got to get kids interested in taking them in the first place. How do you go about doing that?
Well, I think that's a great, and I love hearing what Magna's doing, because we do see manufacturers partnering with the schools, but not enough. And I think in the automotive industry, when you think about the critical nature that supply chain management is, the supplier network, right, is the lifeblood of the OEMs, right, working with their supply chain, yet all too often, the schools are not seen as a key supplier, yet they're supplying one of the number one assets, people. And so when we do see great examples where the company is really either sitting on an advisory committee to help the schools know what the skills are needed today and tomorrow so they can adjust their program and adjust their curriculum. We see donations, right, of time, resources, equipment. So we have the schools that are getting exposure to what is now manufacturing, as Elizabeth said. So they're not seeing it maybe the way it used to be, but we need to kind of have that investment by industry to truly partner with our schools to help them along. And we see it as very much similar to how you would handle any other supplier in the manufacturing process.
Is it go ahead, sorry, Elizabeth.
To add on to Jeannine's comment, that's exactly what Faurecia is doing in Columbus, Indiana. That entire manufacturing plant is a greenfield site. It is transformed. It is going to be pretty much total digital. And we've established with the Department of Labor, as well as significant community schools, as well as high schools, to get that pipeline set to actually develop a tech curriculum for the people that we're bringing in. And they, in some cases, we're also making sure that through Ivy Tech, local community college, they will, if they persevere, they will wind up with an associate's degree, if they want, in robotics. Okay, that is the type of thing that you have to do to in the community to make sure that you have that pipeline of individuals ready to go forward.
Right.
And that is happening. Within Faurecia, we call it the digital enterprise. That is really and truly our footprint for across the globe, because we see that you need to transform manufacturing. All the advanced manufacturing that's going on now is just as significant as what is happening in the product.
And just to build on one last point about statistically, when you look at research, 54% of automotive companies are saying that 20% of their workforce is going to be retiring in the next 3 years. They call it the silver tsunami, and so what are you doing to kind of protect yourself against that very critical thing that you know is going to happen? And so it's just the criticality of that is so important right now.
And I think OEMs play a big part in that within the U.S., particularly given the fact that for years and years and years you've heard that everyone needs a college education. Okay, not everybody needs a college education, particularly when they're going to graduate tremendously in debt and not be able to get a well-paying job that if they went the vocational route, right out of vocational school, they can earn as much or not more than a college grad. I mean, this to me is pure economics.
I think the point that you made earlier is pretty key as well. I don't think you can start too early when you look at young people out there. And going right into the high schools, we're doing a little bit of that as well.
Middle schools.
Absolutely, and let's start early. It's an exciting industry to be in, and I think people are starting to get that message again. We went through a little bit of difficulty back in 2009, but there's excitement here, there's technology, there's great careers, there's a lot of very strong, certainly customers and tier one suppliers out here, certainly in this area, and it's a great place to be. It's a great industry to be in, so let's get that excitement out there with our young people.
Grahame, how is Magna going about doing things like that? To get a new generation excited and charged up and want to be part of this business?
Certainly. Well, we look at ourselves as a pretty innovative company, and we want to continue to become even more innovative. So, there's a lot of great career opportunities in our company. Technology drives demand for people. Growing your business drives demand, and we're doing that. Most of our factories are state-of-the-art. They have a lot of great equipment, from robotics to software. And so there's tremendous opportunities in our company. You want to work in different parts of the world, we can probably help you with that. So whatever your aspirations are, there's probably an avenue somewhere in our company to do that. And when you look at how diverse we are in terms of our product and our processes, all of the different groups in the company, there aren't too many areas on a vehicle we don't touch. And so it can be a pretty compelling story when someone's out looking for a career.
So Faurecia, just to add on to that, we're also very innovative and somewhat competitive. We take the very personal element, okay, because in order to get people, young children interested, middle school, and I really don't like children, but you actually have to go out and talk to them, and because they have to see what's possible, and they have to see that, yes, and I can use all sorts of anecdotes when I go out personally recruiting middle schools, a little bit touchy, but I get through it, and talk about my nieces and the young people that I've encouraged and that have actually found great satisfaction in what they're currently doing in the automotive world. You know, people start talking about the coders. Mary Barra did an excellent, it was in Forbes this morning, or Fortune, about Code with Girls. And the fact that her and her team does so much with the middle schools and high school students about that. That is the personal element that everyone should take out to get the interest and the passion developed to recruit the technical talent that you're going to need in the future.
There's so much interesting technology coming in, 3D printing, collaborative robotics. Does something like that attract a new generation, or do they go, whoa, I'm just going to get replaced by a machine?
We find that it's very much the attraction side, and we actually do some competitions, and you were mentioning kind of even getting into the middle school and exposing them to kind of redefining what manufacturing maybe looks like, maybe what they thought it was from generations prior. So 3D printing for sure, kind of that digital space, automation, all that robotics, the robotics competition, I'm sure you've heard about. One of the things that SME does, we have an education foundation, and it's about that partnership we just talked about between industry and schools, where companies are kind of investing, call it grant dollars, to go into a high school program, look at what they have, look at their equipment, add the 3D printer, add the curriculum, the teacher training, the career counselors, all the elements, because you can't just plop a piece of equipment in there, right? You've got to kind of round out the whole system and support it. And when we've done that, it's called our PRIME program. It's Partnership, Response, and Manufacturing Education. It requires an industry partner, you know, a vested school who's interested, to really kind of build towards those objectives that Elizabeth was talking about. But what we found is when you kind of showcase that 3D printing, you really spark the interest of the young people. But what we've also seen a strong interest from young girls. It has that creative art side that kind of goes more to, call it the generalization of girls versus boys, but we've helped see the diversification through that kind of process of what it's attracting, to your point about changing that image of manufacturing.
Have you guys heard anything of people being afraid of all this new technology coming in, or again, are they excited about it?
I am personally afraid now of my iPhone.
But the young people. Love it.
So I think anything new, there's an inherent fear but kids today, they are embracing technology that some of the older people just shy away from. And it's because they've had it their entire life. I know how difficult it was for me just when a BlackBerry came on. But anymore, it's like, okay. And I am just amazed at what happens. We bring students in because we have targeted schools, middle schools, high schools. We bring them in to our manufacturing plants as well as our headquarters and go through workshops with them. And I am amazed at how hands-on they all want to be. So I think that perception needs to go away. And I think, you know, part of what Grahame had highlighted with the apprenticeships. You know, America has, I think, something close to 150,000 apprentices across. We need to accelerate that because in Europe, you have millions. And that gets back to the sponsorships with, you know, the industry to remove that stigma of working in the manufacturing floor. It's not like what used to be, okay? When I started in manufacturing, back in the 70s, I wasn't even allowed out on the manufacturing floor because I was young at that time. Grahame, I know it's surprising.
And female.
And female. And now, we need to change that stigma.
I think what you were saying, that part of the young people seem to embrace, but what we do see in the workforce is that dichotomy of what you're seeing in maybe the older generations. That's where we're having, I think that's the risk that manufacturers are facing right now, is that adoption of new technologies, innovation, is getting stalled and paced somewhat by our workforce, and so we've got to spend and invest in our people that are currently in jobs, and then you have the next generation that's kind of embracing it and grabbing a hold of it, so you have this very interesting dynamic going on in the workforce in terms of how that profile is changing, and how do people manage that?
Yeah. Grahame, you get the last word on this then. Do you see that change happening? Do you see a younger generation starting to get more interested in manufacturing, especially as we touched on before, as 3D and collaborative robotics and the like come into the business?
Absolutely. The industry is going through an amazing transition right now with all the technology out there, not only in the products, but in how we manufacture and the equipment that we buy. Our young people, our engineers, our high school students, they look at a lot of different options in terms of career path outside of automotive that are interesting and exciting, down in Silicon Valley, and there's so much going on in areas like that. So again, we've got to make sure we market what we're doing properly. There are a lot of fun things going on in our factories, as was mentioned here a minute ago, with automation, with collaborative robotics. I mean, these are fun, interesting toys to a lot of people to get in there and play with. So we're really seeing a change as we expose that to younger minds, a lot of interest. They want to get involved, they're hands-on. There's a lot of bright kids out there that are really looking at automotive now, so it's exciting.
Good. Kudos to you guys and to the SME for putting this panel together, because I agree with what you've all said. These are good paying jobs. They're going begging right now. The future looks bright with new technology coming in. So I'm glad we're playing our little part here, trying to get a new generation involved with this. It can only get good if they do. So with that, Elizabeth, Grahame, Jeannine, thank you much for your time today.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
With that, we're wrapping up our Supplier Symposium here. We'll be back tomorrow. We've got more discussions coming of what's going on with the suppliers and what their thinking is as to where this industry is going. Thank you for watching. Please join us again tomorrow. And again, a thanks to the Ford Motor Company for making this grand display available to us to do the Autoline Supplier Symposium.
Good job. All right, nice job, Elizabeth.
The Autoline Supplier Symposium is brought to you by our signature sponsor, Ford Motor Company, and also by BDO, Hella, and Borg Warner.